Hello, and welcome to another episode of the U.S. Treasury Department's series on reporting for the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund Program, or SLFRF program, which is part of the American Rescue Plan. My name is Chris, and I'm with the Treasury's Office of Recovery Programs. This is going to be a slightly longer video today. We're going to go over the project and expenditure report. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is and its different modules. And ultimately, we're going to demo how to complete one of these reports. But before we get started, a quick reminder message regarding the guidance and accompanying user guide. So while this video will provide information on using Treasury's portal to submit the required SLFRF project and expenditure report, it is really meant as a supplement to the compliance reporting guidance and the project and expenditure report user guide. Treasury has published these important documents and other helpful resources on the Treasury website. You can find them at www.treasury.gov/SLFRP reporting. I highly encourage you to read and review these resources in addition to watching these videos. So with that out of the way, let's just cover first what is the project and expenditure report. The Project and Expenditure Report is one of the primary ways that all recipients of SLFRF funds will complete financial, performance, and compliance reporting requirements as outlined in the compliance reporting guidance. As the name suggests, the report will collect information on all SLFRF funded projects. Projects in this case are new or existing eligible government services or investments funded in whole or in part by SLFRF funding. For each project, recipients are required to provide data on several basic fields, including but not limited to the project name, the related expenditure category for that project, the total obligations and total expenditures for that project, and a brief description of the project itself. Depending on the expenditure category that is associated with each project, there may also be additional programmatic data points required. If you are not sure about what expenditure categories apply to your projects, please review Appendix A of the Compliance Reporting Guidance. In addition, the report requires information on the subrecipients or beneficiaries, subawards, either individual or in aggregate, and ultimately the expenditures associated with these awards for each project. The diagram on the slide in front of you is a simplified illustration of the relationships that exist between these sets of data. The multiple modules or screens in the report, in the portal, will help navigate recipients through the project and expenditure report. Now that we've gone over what the report is, let's jump into the demo. Upon logging into the Treasury portal and selecting a project and expenditure report, you will be directed to the Recipient Information page, which will look very similar to this. This screen is intended to verify relevant information in Treasury's portal. On this screen, you will review and confirm key information on your organization and input information required for the report. The recipient profile information will be pre-populated from your SLFRF application file. If you have previously entered a DUNS+4 number, it will appear here. Much of this should look very similar if you've previously submitted an interim report. So, first you should review and confirm that your recipient profile pre-populated correctly from your SLFRF application file. The DUNS information, name, and address information should match. If you have a DUNS+4 number and the field is not pre-populated, update as necessary. Next, scroll down to the bottom of the page to verify the names and contact information for individuals that you have designated for key reporting roles for the SLFRF program. If you have questions about specific roles or how to assign roles, please view our separate video on designating roles in the Treasury portal. A link to that video will be provided in the descriptions. If changes are needed to the information displayed on the screen, fill it out in the discrepancy box here. For recipients in Tier 1, that is, recipients who are states, U.S. territories, and metropolitan cities and counties with a population over 250,000, there will be 2 additional questions on this screen that are required. They will be 1, who approves the budget in your jurisdiction? And 2, is your budget considered executed at the point of obligation? Please consult the Project and Expenditure Report User Guide for how to properly answer these 2 questions. Finally, answer and complete the SAM.gov registration and executive compensation information question located here. You can complete the field by simply answering the yes or no question from the drop-down menu. If you answer no to this question, additional fields will be displayed that require an input. So complete the fields as required on the screen. Once all the fields have been reviewed and verified, and your contact list looks accurate, click the Save button to save your progress. Then scroll down to click the Next button to proceed to the following screen. And that will now take us to the Project Overview screen. On the Project Overview screen, recipients can view, enter, and edit projects. All projects entered into the portal by a recipient will appear on this screen, and you will be able to see a summary of the data that's been entered, as well as check whether there are any associated subawards or expenditures, if applicable, that have been created. You'll see some instructions here at the top, and as you can see, if we scroll down below, we've already created a few test projects here, and the My Projects section displays the count of projects, the total obligations, and total expenditures reported across all of the created projects. As a reminder, recipients are required to enter all projects funded through SLFRF funds as part of their project and expenditure report. Once projects are entered, they are viewable on the Project Overview screen in the area displayed here and can be updated in future reporting. To enter a project, select the Add New Project button and fill the details using the pop-up form. We're going to try to create a new project now. I'm going to click the Add New Project button, and the pop-up form will display here as shown. The first step is to identify the related expenditure category for this project. I'm going to click the expenditure category group, and we'll say it's for public health. That opens up the additional drop-down of the project expenditure category, and I will select COVID-19 vaccination. And you can see here that once I've identified the project expenditure category for this project, it displays the accompanying bulk upload templates. I'm able to click on the download button to download the associated bulk upload template, and using the upload button, I can upload the completed template to bulk upload multiple projects at one time. I'm not going to get into the details of bulk upload here. We're going to have a separate video on how to use the bulk upload functionality. If you're interested in viewing that video, a link will be provided in the description. So to continue with creation of the project, we're going to be required to create a project name. And for this, I'm going to enter a name here, Test Project Vaccination. Secondly, I'm going to be required to provide a unique project ID for my jurisdiction, just to track this as a unique project going forward. So let's use a unique digit here. And you can see here there's an optional field for adopted budget if you are a Tier 1 recipient this is not optional. This will be a required field. And for the sake of this test account not being tier 1, I will leave this blank. You're then required to enter in total obligations. We'll just say we have $1 million here in obligations, and I have to enter in total expenditures. So let's just say I have $100,000 in expenditures for this project. Further, I'll be required to enter in the status to completion with the options of not started, completed less than 50%, completed more than 50%, 50% or more, and then completed. For the sake of this exercise, I'll say it's completed less than 50%. You'll also be required to provide a text description of the project. We'll enter in quick text description of the project. You can enter a more fulsome description if necessary. Below we have program income earned and program income expended. These fields are optional, but if your project has generated program income, this is where you would enter the values. Lastly, we have a required question here. Does this project include capital expenditure? You have to answer yes or no. If you answered yes, there's a secondary question for entering in the dollar value expected for the capital expenditures in this project. So fill in with the dollar value here of was the total expected capital expenditure. And for this purpose, we'll just enter in the same value as the obligation. And we'll click Add Project. If you did everything correctly, you should see that the saving box pop up and the project is created. You can see here in the top row, we have our project created in row number 1. Now to go in and edit that project, I would simply click on the project status box where my cursor is, and that will bring up the pop-up box for the project that I was just entering. I can go in and change any of the non-grayed out fields here to enter in additional edits. Once I've made my edits, I can click Save Project. And those say that save has changed the values entered in for that project. So that is how you add and edit a project. There are a couple of things in addition to keep in mind when planning and creating your project list. The first is Expenditure Category 6.1 related to revenue replacement and provision of government services. This expenditure category is designed to not require recipients to have to further enter in subrecipients, subawards, and expenditures separately. If you are claiming the entirety of your SLFRF award under this expenditure category, you simply need to create the project and then move on to the recipient-specific module. And you can see that this note here creates a reminder. Similarly, you can see that for a project where the expenditure category is revenue replacement, the subaward status and expenditure status are already marked as complete. The next thing to keep in mind is something I referenced earlier, that there are two ways to enter information in your project and expenditure report. We just went over how to create your project manually. There's also the ability, like we displayed in downloading the bulk upload file, to bulk upload a data set that allows the creation of multiple projects at one time. please be aware that different expenditure categories use different bulk upload templates. So you shouldn't populate one template with all of your projects without being aware of what expenditure categories they're a part of. In order to, again, receive the right bulk upload template, you'll want to go to the Add Project button and select the expenditure category that you're looking to bulk upload for. And that will display the option to download that expenditure category's bulk upload template. And the last flag here, for infrastructure projects with an expected total cost over $10 million, additional fields will be required. Information on infrastructure projects with expected total cost over $10 million must be entered manually at this time in Treasury's portal. And we'll demonstrate what this looks like. So I select infrastructure, identify any of the project, the expenditure categories under infrastructure. In this case, we'll do other water sewer infrastructure. And I'm going to complete the add project form. I'm going to press project number and ID. In this case, I'm going to identify the total obligations as being 10 million. And I'll make the expenditures 1 million. I need to complete the status to completion field. In this case, we'll say that it started but less than 50% complete. And I will enter in something brief as a description. Now, if we scroll down, we see a range of additional questions here that are specific to this expenditure category. At this time, the Davis-Bacon certification and certification for labor agreements questions here at the bottom must be entered in manually. So I need to manually answer these drop-down yes or no questions. It's important that when creating projects via bulk upload for infrastructure, that recipients remember to enter in individually these projects using the edit function that I went over earlier in this video, and manually complete these fields. They cannot be completed through bulk upload. And Appendix D of the user guide provides additional detail on the programmatic data requested by the infrastructure-related expenditure categories. I encourage you to read that if you have any questions about infrastructure-related reporting. And finally, a note on the statuses shown on the project overview. For projects, a green check mark indicates that all required information has been entered for a particular project. For subawards and expenditures, a green check mark indicates that at least one subaward and or at least one expenditure, respectively, has been entered in the system for that particular project. A red checkbox in the projects table denotes a project that is incomplete. Either the project has required information not filled out, or there are not associated subawards or expenditures. So that covers the project overview. And next, we're going to go to the subrecipient page by clicking the Next button. The Subrecipients or Beneficiaries module collects the information about each subrecipient or beneficiary that has received at least one subaward or direct payment of federal funding greater than $50,000 to execute projects supporting the SLFRF program. As I mentioned before, please note that projects entered under Expenditure Category 6.1 or Provision of Government Services are not required to enter the subrecipient module information. The Subrecipients or Beneficiaries module allows users to enter data or manually or leverage the bulk upload functionality displayed here. Similar to the projects page, you'll be able to download the subrecipient bulk upload template by clicking on the button you see here. And similarly, you'll be able to upload the completed template by clicking the upload button and following the instructions on your screen. Again, for bulk upload specific instructions, please read the user guide or view our video on bulk uploading. Please note that you must create a subrecipient prior to beginning the data entry for the Subawards module, since all subawards will need to be associated with a subrecipient. If you choose to manually enter your subrecipient records, please follow the instructions on your screen below. One thing to remember is that recipients must enter at least one of the following 3 unique identifiers for a subrecipient. The first is the Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI. The second is a 9-digit DUNS number, or lastly, a TIN or EIN number. Again, one of these 3 identifiers needs to be available for every subrecipient. So let's go in and try to demo the creation of a subrecipient here. In this case, I've already entered a UEI here that I can use as a test, and I will enter in the legal name and an address. I'll also be required to enter the city information and a zip code. As well as the state or territory. If you have a POC email address available, please include it in the box provided. And with that, all that's left to do is answer the SAM.gov registration question. Similar to the SAM.gov registration in your recipient profile, this is asking about the SAM.gov registration status of the subrecipient that you are creating. Please answer the question yes, no, or not applicable. And once you enter that, and if everything looks accurate, you can go ahead and create a subrecipient. And with that, I have a new subrecipient created. You'll be able to see below at the bottom of the page the new subrecipient that I just created, along with a list of other subrecipients that I have created in this report. Similar to our project, if you need to update your subrecipient information, you can click Show Information, and the pop-up screen will appear with the information that you just created, allowing you to make edits or changes to the information. If you've made changes and they look right, go ahead and click Save Subrecipient. That information will be updated. Once you are done creating your subrecipients, click Next to continue on to the Subawards page. So now we're in the Subawards or Direct Payments module. The Subawards and Direct Payments module allows recipients to enter the required information regarding their, as the name would apply, subawards or direct payments of federal funding greater than $50,000 for all kinds of direct payments, subawards, and contracts made by your organization under the SLFRF program. Again, please note that projects entered under Expenditure Category 6.1 or Provision of Government Services are not required to enter subaward information for the January reporting cycle. The Subawards or Direct Payments module allows users to enter data manually, or like the previous projects and subrecipients module, enter information through bulk upload functions. In order for the bulk upload templates to appear on this module, you need to first identify the project the subaward will be associated with. In this case, let's associate it with the vaccination project we just created. So by going to the project name field, clicking into it, there's a drop down, and we can select the project we recently created, which is vaccination. You'll also see additional projects that were created in this report in the list. If the project you're searching for is not in the list, you can use the search function here to type in a name. That will help narrow down the project that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and select the vaccination project. And just like that, we see now the bulk upload templates have appeared for our download, and the accompanying upload template, upload function to upload the completed template has appeared as well. So let's scroll down and go ahead and create a subaward here manually. So similar to the identifying of the project, we're going to have to associate a subrecipient to this subaward. And clicking the search bar here, we see that we automatically have our recently created test subrecipient with the accompanying UEI number here for us to select. Again, if the subrecipient you're looking for does not appear in the drop-down menu, you can use the search function to search for its name. So let's select this subrecipient. Next, we're going to be asked to provide a unique subaward number that will be attached to the subaward. It is recipient provided, so in this case, I'm just going to make up a unique identifier here. And I'll have to designate the subaward type. In this case, we'll say it's a contract. And the subaward amount. Please remember, for individual subawards, they must be $50,000 or over in the subaward amount. In this case, I'll just make it $50,000. Similarly, I'll have to identify a subaward date. In this case, I'll say it was the 1st of November. And a period of performance. Say it's the 1st through the end of January. Next, I have to fill in here the place of performance. Now, this is not always a clear-cut answer for a particular subaward. Treasury recognizes that some subawards can be performed over large areas or can be performed in ways that it's not easy to identify a specific location for the performance. In such cases where a specific address cannot be identified for the place of performance, we're asking that recipients provide the address for the subrecipient as a proxy for filling out these fields in the subaward reporting form. So in that case, I will enter in similar to what I entered in for the subrecipient. And here, finally, I have to add a brief description of the subaward and what its underlying eligible use is. In this case, it's already associated with a project for vaccination, so I'm going to say contract support to set up vaccination sites. Of course, for your own subawards, there may be a more detailed description that ties in the eligible uses and how it aligns with your project. So please provide as detailed a description as possible here. Now, if you filled that all in and it looks correct, you can go ahead and click the Create Subaward button here. And you'll get a notification that the subaward has been created. Similarly to other modules, you'll see your subaward listed in the table below. And again, this should all be familiar now. If you would like to view the information submitted for this subaward or edit that information, click the Show Information box. And a pop-up will appear with the information that you entered for this subaward. If you want to make any edits, you can make the edits in the fields available and click Save. And that concludes manual entry for the Subawards module. Now we're going to click Next and go to the Expenditures module. Now, on the Expenditures module, information is to be entered for expenditures in 3 categories. The first is expenditures for subawards over $50,000. If you scroll down, the next is aggregate expenditures for disbursements under $50,000. And lastly, we're going to be entering expenditures that are payments to individuals under $50,000. So with that, we're going to go back to the top and we're going to try to tackle entering the expenditures for the subawards greater than $50,000. And since subawards are linked to projects, entering the subaward number for a particular subaward will automatically bring up the relevant project. So we're going to start by creating a couple of expenditures associated with the subaward we just recently created. And here again, I need to use the subaward number that I created previously for the subaward that I want to use. So just copying over the subaward ID number automatically populates the project name, the subaward amount, and information about the type and the subrecipient involved. All I have to do then to create the subaward, the expenditure manually, is enter in the expenditure start date. We'll just say it's December 1st. And the end date, we'll just say it's December 3rd. And enter in the amount. So again, I have a subaward amount, which represents the obligation of $50,000. For the sake of this exercise, I'm going to say that this expenditure is $30,000. And I'll create the expenditure. Notice here that, similar to prior pages, it created the expenditure record below for the project and the subaward that I associated with. Again, you'll be able to click into Show Information to see the information that was populated in this expenditure record. Now, we could stop there, but as I mentioned before, that subaward we just created was for $50,000. Maybe in your situation, only $30,000 of that $50,000 was expended at the time of reporting. That's fine. But for the purposes of this demo, we're going to go again and enter in another expenditure for that subaward to enter in the remaining balance. And please note again, once you enter in the subaward number, the bulk upload download template button and the upload button appear for you to enter in expenditures through bulk upload. So going back to the manual entry, I'll again enter in the start date, which we'll say is the 4th, and expenditure end date, which we'll say is the 7th. and I will enter in the remaining balance of this subaward. And I will click Create Expenditure. So now we've created two expenditures that equal to our subaward amount for the subaward that we just created. If you entered in more than the subaward amount, you would receive an error notifying you that you've entered in more expenditures than the allowable subaward has in amount. So now I've shown you how to manually enter information on expenditures for awards greater than $50,000. Let's talk about how to enter in aggregate expenditures for awards less than $50,000. Similar to attaching the subawards, you're going to have to first identify the project that you want to enter in aggregate expenditures for. In this case, we'll continue on with the exercise we've been doing of associating expenditures to the project we created at the start of this video, which is the test project vaccination. Again, once I've selected the project that I want to create aggregate expenditures for, bulk upload functions appear. Now if I scroll down further, I'll be able to enter in manually what the subaward type in aggregate is for the amounts that I'm trying to enter. In this case, I'll enter in aggregate contracts. And for the purposes of this, I'm going to try to enter in an obligation amount and then a amount for the expenditure, which in this case we'll say is $25,000 so far. Now if I've done everything correctly, I'm going to click Create Expenditure, and that will create a new aggregate expenditure entry in the table below. Similar to the previous modules and record creation forms, you can click Show Information to see what you've entered in for that particular record, and click Save. Finally, at the bottom, I'll be able to enter in aggregate payments to individuals for amounts less than $50,000. Again, I'll select the project first, in this case, the same vaccination project, which will display the bulk upload functions. And I'll enter in the obligation amount, in this case, the remaining $50,000 of the obligation for this project. And then I'll enter in the remaining $25,000 of expenditures left to be reported. If I've done everything correctly, I can click Create Expenditure, and now I've created a record for payments to individuals with the associated project. Again, clicking on Show Information shows the information that I entered for this particular payment to individuals record. And I can click Save. If everything on the expenditures page looks right, I can scroll all the way to the bottom and click Next to go to the recipient specific module to continue on completing this report. All right, so we're through the hard part and we're near the end, I promise. Now we're at the recipient specific module, where the first set of questions we're going to see are related to revenue replacement. Here, recipients will have the option to update or provide information associated with their revenue replacement that's not previously provided as part of prior submissions. This still only pertains to the year 2020, shown in the box here. Depending on your answer to the question, is your jurisdiction electing to use the standard allowance of up to $10 million for identifying the revenue loss, you will be asked additional conditional questions. As outlined in the final rule, recipients will have the option to make a one-time decision to calculate revenue loss according to the formula outlined in the final rule, or elect a standard allowance of up to $10 million, not to exceed the award allocation that they've been provided to spend on government services throughout the period of performance. So I'll show you both options. If you select the drop-down and click yes to the question of electing to use the standard allowance, you'll have options to identify exactly what your estimated revenue loss is, and you can enter the dollar amount in this box. Obviously, it would not exceed either 10 million or your max allocation of SLFRF funds, whichever is lower. And then you have to answer the corresponding question: were fiscal recovery funds used to make a deposit into a pension fund? You can answer yes or no. And then please provide an explanation of how your revenue replacement funds were allocated to government services. Here, you would provide a written description of what your jurisdiction is planning to do with these revenue replacement funds, and we would be encouraging you to be as detailed as possible here in this text description. Now, going back up, if you were to select no to electing to use the standard allowance of up to $10 million, another series of questions appear where you would enter in the traditional inputs for calculating revenue loss according to the formula outlined in the final rule. This includes entering your base year general revenue, your growth adjustment used, the fiscal year end date for your jurisdiction, the actual general revenue as of 12 months ending December 31st, 2020, the estimated revenue loss due to COVID-19, the COVID-19 health emergency as of December 31st, 2020, and then again, were fiscal recovery funds used to make a deposit into a pension fund. In either scenario, you are encouraged to provide an explanation of how revenue replacement funds are being allocated towards government services. And again, please be as detailed as possible. So, for the purposes of going through this demo and filling this form out, I'm going to select yes to electing to take the standard allowance. In my estimated revenue loss in this case, let's say it is $10 million. I'm entering no for the use of fiscal recovery funds to make deposit in a pension fund. And I'll put a generic description here to support standing up. Vaccination sites. And if that looks accurate, and again, I encourage you to have a more fulsome definition or explanation here in the text box. But once you have that, click Save, and your changes are saved. And next, we'll move on to the certification and review screen. Oh, and before I leave this module, for states and U.S. territories who are filling out the project and expenditure report, on the recipient-specific module, you will also see 2 questions on tax offset provision. If you are interested in how to fill these out properly, I would encourage you to review the project and expenditure report user guide on page 37, where these fields are explained for for states and territories. So with that, let's move on to certification. All right, we're finally at the certification screen. Here at the top, you're going to see a certification statement that your jurisdiction's authorized representative should read and affirm. And if we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a quick summary of your name, title, contact information, but also the number of projects that were submitted, the total obligations that were reported for those projects, and then the total expenditures that were reported. Please verify that these three figures align with what you're expecting to report in this project and expenditure reporting period. If that looks accurate, you can go ahead and click Certify and Submit. Now, before I click this, I'll let you know that already there's going to be some errors that get flagged here for this test record, and I'll show you how to solve them. So let's go ahead and certify and submit and see what happens. This pop-up box comes up and says, are you sure you want to submit? I'm going to click Submit, and I get a submission error. And I scroll up to the top, and I get a series of error messages telling me that certain things were not completed. So let's go take a look at what that is. So right in the first error message, it tells me that I have a particular project, in this case, my test project for premium pay, where the amount of obligations that I've entered in my Subaward and Expenditures module do not equal what I was reporting for that project at the project level. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. Let's jump back over to the project overview and see what those errors are. Great. So if I scroll down to my project list, I see that the first two projects here, everything is marked as completed. But for my third project, in this case, my project for $100,000 in obligations and $100,000 in expenditures, I do not have the Subaward status and expenditure status marked as complete. So it means I need to enter more information in the Subaward and or expenditure module that aligns with what I'm reporting here for $100,000. So let's go back to the expenditures module and do just that. So I'm back at the expenditures module. I'm going to scroll all the way down in this case for this premium pay project. I'm going to select the premium pay project that I want to enter information for. In this case, I'm going to enter in $100,000 in obligations because I know I'm, looking to balance out the remainder of this project's obligations, and similarly $100,000 in expenditures for this project. Again, in your case, you're going to break it up into expenditure records that make sense for the data that you have. But in this case, I'm going to use a hypothetical example. Now, I'm going to, again, create expenditures. And now I have a new expenditure record for aggregated payments to individuals for $100,000 in obligation and $100,000 in expenditure. So we'll go back to the project overview and see what that looks like. And just like that, I can see now that my project record for the premium pay project has a green check mark for Subaward status and a green check mark for expenditure status. So it looks like I've completed all the information for my projects. I'm going to go back to the certification page and try to certify and submit. And let's try that one more time. I'm going to click the Certify and Submit button, but first making sure 3 projects, I have the right obligation amount, the right expenditure amount. I'm going to click Certify and Submit, and I'm going to click Submit. And like that, your report has been submitted. This brings us back to the home page of the Treasury portal. We can go back to my compliance reports. And now that I'm in my compliance reports, I can see here that my project and expenditure report record here, the status shows submitted. If I click into the little eye icon, and then I'm brought back into my report, and you'll see at the top here, the status is submitted. Now, if I realize that I've made a mistake or I need to make edits to my report, and it is before the reporting deadline, I can scroll down here and click the Unsubmit button to unsubmit my report. A pop-up box appears and says, "Are you sure you want to unsubmit?" Please know that if you unsubmit a report, you'll be required to recertify and submit the report in order for it to be properly counted by the Treasury. So in this case, I'll unsubmit and it will turn this report back into draft. And you can see now the report is back in draft status and I can make updates to this report. So that is the entire overview of how to complete the project and expenditure report through manual entry. Again, if you're interested in finding out how to complete this report using bulk upload files, I encourage you to view our related video on bulk uploads. We'll provide a link to that and other videos in this series in the descriptions. Thank you.